And going live. Oh, I should pull up Ahoy so I remember. Okay. It's Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are reviewing Ahoy. So yeah, we skipped a week. Scott, you were out in LA, and I had my mom visiting us in New York City.
My mom was in LA.
Yeah.
And it's how holiday family time.
Yeah. Usually like November through December, we miss a lot of Geek Nights, but I feel like for a bunch of reasons, this like end of November is when all our stuff got piled up. So we'll probably do more.
We actually do Thanksgiving. We don't really do, the other holidays as much. Right?
Exactly.
So.
Had a pretty good Thanksgiving, but it was fun,
I don't have any Geek Nights interfering plans for December. Just,
I don't think I do either. We got PAX, of course, this weekend, so we're not doing a show on Thursday.
There's a PAX Unplugged this weekend, but that's it.
Yep. The only thing, and MagFest is later than usual, so we don't have that like New Year's-ish disruption. I guess we should make a New Year's plan.
Maybe.
Yeah, whatever that might be. Anyway, every opening bit, everything that happened to me over the past couple weeks is gonna disappear the moment I say anything right now. So I guess.
Oh, I'm gonna save my opening bits because I got about 10,000 up. Right, I'll dole them out slowly, one at a time.
So I guess having my mom out, the one thing that stood out, and it was just cool to see it, is we took my mom around in the city, so we just took the subway everywhere. And the last time she was in the city, it was not the just tap your credit card and everything works subway entrance system, nor was it the Metro card. It was the token, something I have never used.
Okay.
I
have used the token, but not many times.
The only time I've ever used a token anywhere was in Istanbul, and they don't even use the tokens anymore in the year 2023.
Used tokens for the subway and also for tolls on the highway, but that was in the last millennium.
Yep. I never used the token on the highway, but I did very often have to throw the 35 cents into those scoops on the Garden State going down to Wildwood with you. That sucked. But watching my mom use the subway was interesting because like she's a big believer in mass transit, but just because she's a good, normal, progressive person, even though she lives in a car place. But actually using the subway, she couldn't stop talking about, why don't other cities do this? Why is New York like, this is great. This is amazing. Why doesn't LA have this? Why does no one have this? Like, she was kind of mad that nobody else has this. And she was like, I'm going to start bugging Lansing. Like, they gotta at least make buses or something.
I guess it took her 5 minutes. It took me several years to go from car to banned cars, right? But
yep. I mean, I grew up in, unlike, we both used cars, but I grew up in fucking car town, USA, like Detroit.
Connecticut is also a car town. It's not a place like Detroit where they make cars, but it's like there is no, in Connecticut, there's like a bus that's garbage and no one uses it.
Yep.
And it never comes. And it's basically like 100% car, except for the train to the New York City, and that's it.
Yep. And I remember when we moved to New York City, you kept your car for a little while and then you were like, fuck this ASP. I'm not moving this car twice a week for the rest of my life. And I was worried, because my car disappeared, as we've talked about on Geek Nights in the past. So I was worried, oh, I got to buy a car. But then living in the city for even a few months, I was like, you know what? Fuck owning a car. I only got a car very recently.
All right, so that's the one opening bit you're
I'll see if I can remember any. I'll try to save another thing we did with my mom. But anyway,
I have like 10,000 billion opening bits because I went to California for the first time. I went to only LA, but I went.
Oh, it was your first time. Okay.
I'd never been in the state of California other than a brief transfer at LAX to go to Australia.
Yeah.
And I had never been in LA before, and I spent a whole week there. And, each day we were doing all kinds of stuff. So I could do opening bits about each different thing we did, including, Disneyland and whatnot, right?
Do a Thursday show. Scott reviews LA.
Yeah. And then I also got a new computer. So it's like we just got so much material going on over here. But I'll refrain and only use a very small material, right, to start off with, is that when we were at Disneyland, we're walking around, looking around, and normally I use my credit card for all purchases because points, right?
Yep.
And, we could go on and on about, what's up with that, but that's not relevant right now. But it just so happens that my bank gives out Disney debit cards, right?
Huh.
And I have a debit card with Darth Vader on it because that was the coolest choice available, right?
They didn't have Thrawn, I assume.
They didn't have Thrawn, like an X-Wing, or, anything like that, So I have a Darth Vader debit card. And I was told that if you use it at Disneyland, it's a better deal, right? So for all Disney-related purchasing and purchases at Disneyland, I use that card, which I would never otherwise use, right? And that was that. And I was also told there are special benefits if you have that card. And I was like, that's probably not actually going to happen. And so we're walking around Disneyland, somewhere near the Space Mountain. And there's a beat up old sign. And it's like Disney credit card, like Disney Visa credit card, special bonus here from like 2 to 6 p.m. And I'm like, really? That's actually a thing? It wasn't just made up. It was the only one I saw. It might be the only one, but it was actually there. And I'm like, well, I might as well go and look and see what this thing is, right? So everyone in, my group, my family was like, all right, let's go check that out. Why not? We got nothing else to lose, right? It doesn't cost anything. So we go over there. And it's basically no one over where this path leads. There was like one person in line in front of us, right? So clearly people either didn't notice this sign, or it was out of the way, or they didn't have the card. They did check the card, actually, which they never do at other places, right?
Yep. Honestly, even at MSG, I they never check at the chase entrance. They don't care.
Oh yeah. So we're like, all right. So we go over this area, and we notice, first of all, this area is clearly a not frequently trafficked building because it contains a special area for people who are in like the vacation club, which is basically people whose entire lives are Disney and pay a lot of money and come there a lot. Right? Yep. Which is not a lot of people. So I glanced into that area, and it's like, yeah, there was some cool stuff in there, I guess. But we could not go in that area. The event, the special thing was in a side room near the entrance, so we couldn't actually go in the entrance. And they told us that it was a photo with Darth Vader, and I'm like, I could just do that at a convention. This Darth Vader's from.
But that's not the real professional Darth Vader. That's a Darth Vader.
Right. So, but I'm like, all right, it's going to be a high quality one. And, I'm not a person who cares about getting your photo with a character. That doesn't really interest me very much at all, right? I don't care about that, whatever. But it's going to take 5 minutes in line behind one person. Darth Vader's not actually going to choke me to death because it's, not really real. Right? So what do I got? I have nothing to lose whatsoever. I'll go in and see what happens, right? We go in, and you know what? I think I changed my mind. I thought I wasn't the character photo kind of person, right? But in this instance, right, it wasn't just character photo situation. It wasn't just like stand there, take a photo, and leave, right? It was a whole thing. I don't know if he had like pre-recorded things, or if there was some kind of voice modulator, or if they were an actor of some kind, or if James Earl Jones wasn't in there because he's too tall. And James Earl Jones is really old right now, right? But the person it was like a mini show basically where Darth Vader like threatened us and walked around.
Personally threatened by the Darth Vader himself.
And it sounded exactly like a Darth Vader, and he breathed a lot, like right? We were all standing there like nervously laughing hysterically. And then they're like, and then he's like, move it. He's like part the way. And then the assistants who are all dressed as, Imperial ship crew people are like, we're like scanning, and they're like, they take photos, right? Yeah. And then they had one of us gave them our phone, and they're like, secondary scan with other phones. So it's like, it wasn't really. So, the photo part, it's like, who gives a crap, right? But the it's sort of like you know, a very short interactive theater situation, right? And that part I think is excellent.
Well, it's cool because it's a lot like close-up magic, like that kind of thing, like a little local performance.
Exactly. So it's like it's like going to see a play that's like 2 minutes long, but you're in it. Kind of. And if the actor is really good, you know, then it's entertaining, right?
Well, especially because, you know, Disney has its pros and cons, and the Star Wars like interactive hotel thing was a bust for a bunch of reasons that we don't need to get into. But when it comes to like that level of interaction, like the person dressed up as the character, Disney doesn't fuck around. When we went to our friend's wedding years ago and they did the wedding at Disney, like, so there was like Minnie and Mickey Mouse came to the wedding and it was over Halloween. Minnie and Mickey dressed up, and you can tell when there is a professional inside one of those costumes. It was weird that it felt like the real Mickey Mouse was like at this wedding, like hanging out with people.
Well, I can tell you because I went with people who had been there often and previously had, you know, like annual passes, right? And but we went to the Star Wars land, right? Which we'll talk about. I'll talk about that later. But one thing about the Star Wars land is that I was told is that when that land was new, all the people working in it were like much more enthusiastic and trying much harder. And now that the land had been there quite a while, right? The people there, they were still putting on a show, but clearly they were not trying extra hard, right? As they could have been. Whereas the Darth Vader guy or whoever was in there was clearly trying with the maximum effort, right? Probably because they had a short line so they can give more energy, right? It's like if there was a big long line, that person probably would have gotten really tired.
Yeah.
Right. And been like, all right, next, let's go.
Yeah. If your lines are just, you know, it's a salty pretzel situation, you're going to milk that line.
Right. And it's like, so, you know, you think about people who work on Broadway shows, right? It's like they put that show on once a day, maybe, right? A few times a week. They have a couple days off, maybe, right? And it's like they can give it their full effort. Whereas if you're working a ride in Disneyland, it's like you're putting on, you know, a very small show, but like every 30 seconds. Constantly. It's like, you know, like the first day you might be so into it, but like as the weeks go by, you know,
and the months and the years.
So I have so many other opening bits that we'll save for the future. We'll see.
All right. So in some news, and there actually is a lot of news going on, but one thing I want to talk about.
News.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
A whole week. Yeah.
But I want to talk about one in particular because it's an obvious thing, but there's some data here, and the data is why I'm making this my news. So this is on Kotaku, and it's based on a study that the ESA did. Kids want digital currency and subscriptions more than they want new games this Christmas. And it gets into, and the data is incomplete because there's some questions they didn't ask that Kotaku points out, but basically they were doing a study, a real statistical analysis of kids in America aged 10 to 17, which is a very, very hot demographic for Capital. Like, that's like one of the most important demographics to get your grubby little meat hooks into as hard as possible.
Well, because even if those people have no money, right?
Yep.
If you can get them to fall in love with your thing, right? Then once they have money, that they're right. It's like, you know, Pokemon is the #1 intellectual property in history, right? In terms of total monies from all its different things it does, you know, all its different incarnations and products. Why? Because it got its hooks into a bunch of kids who didn't have any fucking money, and then they did have money, and they were still Pokemaniacs, and it continues to infect constantly. It is never let
we
up.
know some people.
Every new 10-year-old is Pokemon every single time.
Think about Disney, what we just talked about, the lifers. There's definitely some people we know who would not be opposed to having a Pokeball on their tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one grain of salt. This study was commissioned by the ESA, the Entertainment Software Association. So there might be a bias toward entertainment software. But that said, the study says that in that demographic,
but the ESA serves, you know, its members. It wants to provide them with accurate information.
That is true.
They can, you know, make correct decisions, at least maybe not correct, but, you know, best for capitalism decisions for themselves.
Yep.
Right?
So according to the ESA, kids aged 10 to 17 in America, if they were asked what do they want most for Christmas, 72% of all responses were related to video games.
Yep.
Across the board.
Sense.
Video games is all kids want.
Mm-hmm.
So the deeper part, because that makes sense. I mean, talk to a kid in the year 2023, and you would be surprised that number is so low.
I would have given that same answer in 1980 something.
Yep, at almost any point in my life, I would have said a Nintendo game of some kind when I was young.
That's right.
But digging in deeper, it's even more interesting. Of the kids who want video games, 39% of them want game subscriptions, which appears to be things like battle passes for games they already play.
Yep.
The next one down, 29%, so already we're way over the majority, want currency in a game they already play.
Yeah, they want Robux.
Kids don't even want new digital games. Almost all kids want Robux or the equivalent currency or V-Bucks or whatever, or they want battle passes for games they otherwise play.
I mean, Robux let you buy games in Roblox, so it's effectively buying games.
And that's where, as the reporter here points out, the ESA did not release data breaking down what the fuck they mean by game subscriptions. There's some explanation, but there are definitely limits to how deep this public data set goes. But it is very interesting that only a very small percentage of kids want actual brand new games that are not part of an existing closed ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, you get hooked on a thing, right?
Yep.
It's like, nowadays when I'm an adult, our brains, I guess, at least my brain is wired in such a way where I seek novelty and I'm always looking for new.
Like I like Overwatch, I like Counter-Strike. I don't play them both all the time. I do play other video games.
Right, but when I was a kid, I guess, I definitely did more, not just because I had less things, right? And there wasn't such an abundance, but also it's like, yeah, I could watch a VHS tape 1,000 times and I could, play with the same toy or play, it's like I could do that, right? And that was how I could.
But also, like, if I didn't have to work,
2 over and over, more than I played any other one. Right?
If I didn't have to work, I would just play all those games more. Like I would just dive in deep.
But I'd say, like, if Minecraft existed when I was, 10, 12, 13,
I would have been fucked.
I probably would have just played Minecraft and nothing. I probably would have, right?
Yeah.
So if they were selling, it's like, why would I want another game? I'm still super into Minecraft.
Yep.
I just want Minecraft bucks.
And it's hard to have a strong opinion on exactly how good or bad this is because this is all still pretty new ecosystems. Like all these things we're talking about, these concepts of game development and monetization did not exist on Earth when we were kids. So we can't fall for the trap of it was different when we were young and that is a better way. But simultaneously, I do fear that the way games monetize as capitalism gets ever increasingly extreme is fundamentally breaking some things. And I don't know how games that aren't like Roblox and Minecraft will get made in the future.
I mean, it's like, I think it's, when we were playing games, we were doing mostly PCs and consoles, right?
Yep.
And it's like, you bought a game, you beat it, right? Where now it's
I bought Mario 3 for $70, and I definitely got more than 1990s American dollars worth of fun out of that.
It's like only a few, right? It's, they're probably got a Switch or they're just using iPads and iPhones, and it's like, it's like that's the game they got on there, and if they don't stop enjoying it and go looking for a different game, or they don't think about it. I don't know.
Yep, but I hope, and again, suspicion. I have no data to back this up. What I suspect is happening is not what a lot of older gamers might say is happening. I think a lot of these ecosystems are capturing people who wouldn't have been video gamers or would not have engaged the way that we would expect them to. I suspect the market for the kinds of games and experiences that we talk about and like I want to buy this game for a certain amount of money and play it and enjoy it and move on to another game. I feel like that demographic is also growing. This other one just makes more money and is bigger because it's pushed more, but I don't think it's displacing the other side of gaming as much as it might feel like it is.
I think it's, when I was a kid, my world was small, right? The things I knew about was not, and there wasn't an internet the whole time, right?
Yep.
But it's like, even when the internet started to come in, around 13, 14, whatever. It's
like the
my
Neo
world
Geo was something that was inaccessible to me. I barely knew that existed. I didn't touch
Sure.
one.
Right, I saw pictures of them in video game
Yeah.
magazines, but like the world, as I understood, the amount of the Earth that was mapped and human society that was mapped in my brain was small. So the things that I could want, right?
Yep.
It's like
You didn't know about communism yet.
Exist, but in terms of things that did exist, I didn't know about a lot of things that existed. So my imagination of what I could even ask for a holiday as a gift was not a wide variety of things. And only when I got older that I start to understand the size of the world and know about all the things and possibilities that are in it. So it's that, I think kids just, even with, internet connected iPads, I'm going to guess kids probably still don't have a very, large worldview, right? And they can only ask for things that they know about.
Yep, but I do also think, especially things like Fortnite, the V-Bucks and Robux and those types of ecosystems, I think they are directly predatory and may pull some percentage of kids into a permanent lifestyle closed ecosystem and keep that map small in the gaming world.
Maybe. The Robux is definitely child labor.
Robux is the worst of all of them, I think, right now, at least that I'm aware
I don't know
of.
if it's the worst. Because I don't know what other ones exist.
It's the worst of the big ones that I'm aware of.
That's one that I'm confidently saying is child labor.
It's definitely bad.
Yeah.
So you got any news?
Yeah. So TikTok owns a company called ByteDance. Or no, ByteDance owns TikTok.
Yeah.
That's correct. So there's a big company, ByteDance. TikTok is a thing that they own. TikTok is obviously the number one thing that they own, right? That's where all the money comes from. They also own another thing called Nuverse, Nuverse. Nuverse is a video game publisher. Nuverse, I guess they realize just isn't fucking worth doing anymore because, they own TikTok. So
Yep.
They're basically mostly shutting that down and like laying people off at Nuverse, which is the publisher. And so all the people for all the games from Nuverse are like, oh no, right? All the new, all the work that Nuverse was doing on new games is basically stopping, and right. But they're a publisher, not a developer. And so mostly people are worried because the only notable thing that Nuverse publishes is Marvel Snap. No one gives a shit. Everything else they have is garbage.
I couldn't name anything else they've got without looking it up.
You're not missing anything whatsoever, right? So everyone's like, oh no, what's going to happen, right, to Marvel Snap?
Even Wikipedia really only talks about Marvel Snap.
Yeah, Marvel Snap is super successful. It's not going anywhere, right? But like, these other garbage games that they've got, like, this One Piece whatever game and this Warhammer game, and I guess they got a Ragnarok 10, whatever,
Yeah.
Basically all their other garbagey games will probably go away because no one plays those things, right? And it's like, okay. But people are, they're freaking out, and it's yet, this is showing you like, hey, if you make garbagey games, maybe they're not so successful, right?
Yep. Well, I feel like that's
just because you can produce a game with a major IP license and some, the business model of microtransaction stuff for phones doesn't mean it's going to make, there's no guarantee that it's going to work.
Yep.
Right?
Well, especially because like kids are stupid with kid brain up to a point, but the kid who's choosing between the Roblox thing they're addicted to versus a bunch of shitware games that are all kind of the same game, a lot of those kids are going to recognize that the shitware games are all the same kind of game eventually.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some extreme One Piece fans really have to play that One Piece game, but I don't even think so, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's like, it's just more of the stuff we talk about all the time. If a company's making a bunch of money from one thing and hardly any money from another, even if the other thing might be profitable, it's not worth it for them to keep doing it because it doesn't move their needle, because their needle is harder to move. big layoffs going on everywhere.
Yep.
You know, this is just more and more, you know, the same action. So,
Yep, they were very clear too. Quoting the article, the firm said they have, quote, no plan to return to the $185 billion global video games market. They added, the person who said that would not be identified, but they're basically saying we're backing away from video games as a concept from where this money could be invested.
Right, because in order to get enough money for them to care, they would have to make, you know, us have such a hit that the game itself becomes a platform like the games you were talking about, the Roblox and the Minecraft.
And there's only room for so many platforms. And then on the other end, you got companies like Bethesda spending 5 or 10 years making like a game that makes money but targets a very small demographic at great risk and great cost.
Anyway.
One last little news, partly because this is really funny. So, you know, there's the Game Boy and the N64 apps on the Switch, and you can play like old games. It's kind of like an emulator. It mostly just works. It's a cool thing. We've talked about it before. Nintendo in Japan, so the home turf, had to make a different special app for exactly 2 N64 games, separate from the rest of the N64 games that they brought on the Switch, because Japan has extremely restrictive and kind of broken censorship and access laws around video games. And there are certain things that make a video game basically automatically get classified into this special category. Z rating is 2 more. But a Z-rated game in Japan legally cannot be sold to anyone under 18. And as a result, Nintendo had to make a special 18 plus only with verification version of the N64 app just for GoldenEye and Jet Force Gemini and no other games.
You know, it's like, hey, that's, you know, because if you have to put the rate, you know, if they package all those games into one app on the Switch instead of having them be individual.
The whole app would have to be 18 plus, or the app would have to have age verification built into it.
Yeah, or something like that. So they just went with the easiest solution to comply with the law. Just make 2 apps, right?
Yep.
It's like, okay, that's probably very easy. That's probably a very easy technical solution.
Yep. It's a really silly law. I don't want to get into that. Like, it's kind of good that the U.S. never actually.
It's so weird how, you know, Japan also, some of the things they allow and then don't allow, right?
Yep.
It's like a crazy mixed bag I can't keep track of, and I don't because I don't live there.
Yep. Also, I would say 99.9% of all the games affected by the differences in those rules between the US and Japan are games that I either have no interest in playing or potentially edge into I have moral questions about. But in this case, it's GoldenEye. So expect a lot of people going for the low rent joke to talk about the 18 plus only N64 app, but all it is GoldenEye and a game most of you have never heard of.
Jet Force Gemini is a game I've heard of. I think I even played it.
I've never played it.
I think it's a little third-person shooty thing with these.
Yeah,
guys,
I think our Kione said the game has multiple decapitations in it, which is why it got the rating.
All right.
So there we go. In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book is The Murderbot Diaries. I am 75% through the most recent Murderbot book. So
I'm over 50% through, but what happened was I was reading on the way to California.
Yep.
But on the way home from California, I was unconscious. And so when I woke up, I fell asleep in California, and I woke up in Virginia. And I did not read on the way home. Otherwise, I would have been 100% done. So I will read it tomorrow or today or whatever.
You know, the same pattern when I fly out west to Seattle for PAX, I usually play video games and read on the flight to Seattle, and I am, for some reason, instantly unconscious for the entire flight home.
It was a red-eye flight home. The flight took
yeah. Oh, red eye. That sucks. But yeah, Murderbot Diaries, sometime around the holiday, the Christmassy time in December, we'll do the Murderbot Diaries book club show. If you haven't started reading the Murderbots, you could probably read all of them before we do the show. They are fast reads. They're good reads. I got a lot to say about them. just in general.
This many books, we've read them all. If we don't have anything to say, that's a problem.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say now is that Murderbot as a character is perfect and must be protected at all costs. And if I knew Murderbot, I would do everything I could to help Murderbot out.
But Murderbot doesn't want to talk to you.
No, that's fine. But I'd like when the humans are like talking to each other on the feed, like, oh, don't embarrass it. Just leave it alone. It's fine. Stop bothering it. You're making it nervous. But at PAX Unplugged, which is this weekend, coming up like real quick on Friday, learn and play Whist, Hearts, and Wizard. We're going to teach you for 2 hours on Friday at 5 p.m. how to play Whist, Hearts, and Wizard. And then you're all going to play Hearts and Wizard. You don't actually need to play Whist. You will understand
We're going to
Whist.
play one hand of Whist.
Yep. It's going to be real fun. We're going to teach you all how to play. We're going to walk around helping people out. And we're going to teach you all not how to be masters. I don't have the hubris to say that we are masters of these games, but we're real good at these games. And if you listen to even a little bit of what we say, you will be better at all 3 of these games than anyone who is not legitimately good and who did not listen to us. We're also doing, I might have just finished the slides like this morning.
I still have to do the Wizard part of the slides. I did the Hearts and the Whist part.
Yep. I feel like I got the harder slides when we flipped the coin, but I finished the slides for Mastering Game Mechanics, Worker Placement, 2:30 p.m. on Saturday in the Crab God Theater. 59 minutes of me and Scott talking about worker placement. That's it. It's all worker placement. And you know what? It was really hard to cut this down to just 1 hour, putting the slides together.
All right.
It's going to be a real
Check
good
them out
time.
and do some edits after dinner.
Yeah. So if you're going to be at PAX Unplugged, let us know. Yeah, as you might have noticed, GeekNights has a Discord. GeekNights has a forum. We actually have a link to the Discord from our website now because we have a new website. So,
Oh my God.
right?
What year is it?
If you want to hang out with us, say hi to us, play a game with us at PAX, I cannot promise that we will be able to play a game with you. There's a decent chance you will find us. We'll be at a table with people already playing a game. But let us know. Maybe we can coordinate a little get together. We could all meet in a place and wave at each other. We'll be at PAX for the whole weekend.
I don't want to play a game with you, stranger. Go play a game with your own people.
I might want to play a game with you. I could play a game with someone.
Go do that.
I might, Rabbit. I might.
All right. Have fun.
All right. So, anyway, I did the meta moment before the things of the day for some reason because I had my tabs in the wrong order. So, things of the day. What do you got?
What did I have? Let me.
You had no bullshit games.
Oh, that's right. So let's say, you know, you don't like playing games made by ByteDance. You don't like playing games like Roblox and Minecraft or whatever that have microtransactions that all the kids are playing these days.
Yep.
But you got a phone, and you know what? No matter how many consoles and PCs and whatever you have, and Steam Decks or whatever, you know, sometimes all you got's your phone, and you got to have a phone game, right?
Yep.
You just gotta. Everybody's got a phone. You got to have a phone game for those times when that's all you got. But it's hard because you go in the phone app store, and it's a bunch of garbage in there, right? And you browse around, and it's really hard to find a game that's not just gambling or something. So what do? You go to this website. Somebody here has done, you know, the Lord's work and curated both for Android Google Play Store and for the iOS App Store a list of the games that are not bullshit. All of these games are either free, no ads, and you just play them, and that's it, or you have to pay for them one time, and there's no ads, and there's no bullshit, and you play the game. So you got to look at the list and say, I know a lot of these games. I've seen them before. This isn't news, right? But it's many pages long. And of course, many of the games are still garbagey games because it's mobile games.
But they're not below that line of garbage.
They don't have ads, and they don't have microtransactions or any bullshit like that, even if they're bad games. So they're either free or one flat fee to just play, and that's it.
Not bad.
So if you're looking for a phone game and you got no phone games going on, check out this list. It might be hard to sift through because it's a, kind of a meh website, but at least it's going to be better than browsing the App Store on your phone because that's just going to be full of garbage, right?
Yeah. So my thing of the day, you might know, I was really marching band was my primary thing in high school. And one thing I did, and in the end, I chose not to be a drum major because I actually like playing my trumpet more. But I did try out with a moderate number of people who also tried out to be the drum major. And if you don't know what that is, in a marching band, it's effectively the leader of the band. But for practical purposes, they don't actually run the entire band. In high school, the teacher runs the band. They run parts of the band. You're a conductor, but also you're a performer because in high school,
the conductor doesn't run the orchestra; they just conduct the orchestra.
Yep. So you operationally run parts of the band, and they don't give you the full responsibility. Not like a real drum major in a professional band or a college band, but in high school, it's a much lower responsibility job, but it is a lot of responsibility. And I thought about doing it, so I tried out to be the drum major. But the other aspect of the drum major role, and this is true in high school, is that you also have to be a performer. So not just playing instruments and marching and all that, but drum majors traditionally will have either a staff or a mace or a sword or a rifle of some kind. And one of their responsibilities, if you're marching a parade, is to basically go apeshit with that thing at the front of the band. You might have seen this if you watch an old-timey parade. There's a guy just going crazy with the stick in front of some people marching. That's a drum major.
Yeah, it's more like, you're in the color guard than you're in the band.
Yep,
right?
but it's solo color guard. There's just one of you by yourself. You're not coordinating with other people.
Be a color guard on the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, that person is still alone by themselves, right?
Yep, and usually whatever the color guard's doing, the drum major's doing that an order of magnitude more in any regard, any aspect. So I tried out to be the drum major, and I had to go through a process like this. But if you could look at my thing of the day, if these people are a 7 out of 10 on the scale of for real drum major nonsense, what I had to try out for in high school was a 0.5 out of 10. I can do the 0.5 out of 10 version of what these people are doing. This is video of the 2017 drum major tryouts for Ohio State's marching band. So these are the people trying out.
Referred to usually as the Ohio State University.
Yes.
To separate it from the other ones.
Yep. The 2017 Ohio State drum major tryouts are absolutely fucking insane. These people
that's probably, because that's really one of the top drum major jobs that is probably in the world.
To get to the point of doing this tryout, you've already made it through a lot of screenings. One, you were good enough to be in Ohio State's marching band at all.
Right. It's it's a huge marching band, but it's there's a lot of people trying to get into it.
Yeah, they're one of the best.
Yeah, and the college football at Ohio State is as big as it is basically anywhere.
Yep.
Right. So, it's it's pretty much at the top, right? It's the best. If you're going to any other big college football band place, you're really just going sideways.
Yep. So yeah, this is pretty cool stuff, and I could not do anything even close to what they were doing with my mace when I was in high school.
No.
All right, so we went to another PAX. We went to PAX West, and at PAX West, we saw a game that we just hadn't played, but it has some
game I had seen before.
Yeah, but it has some familiar art. It has it's adjacent to a bunch of other games we like, both mechanically and publisher-wise. So we decided to play it, and after 1.6 playthroughs, I think we can review it with one caveat that the only thing we cannot speak to on this game is whether or not it will survive repeat play. We cannot speak to that aspect of it.
Expansion coming that might help you.
Yep. Right? But yeah, so Ahoy has actually got a lot going on, and it did something that's kind of hard to describe that's different. I've never seen a game do something like this before, and I struggle to define this concept, but we'll get to that after we explain what the hell this game is.
Yeah. So, Letter Games, the publishers of Root, were like, hey, that was really successful. Let's try to do that again. Right. And so they had the same artist, Kyle Farron, produce even more amazing artwork
Yep.
in the pirate theme.
It's a good theme.
I mean, it's unbelievably good. And they made a game that bears some resemblance to Root, right? It is asymmetrical. Each different, there's several factions competing on a space with tokens, in a political battle of sorts.
Yep.
Right? Each faction plays somewhat similarly, but also drastically differently.
Yep.
The game comes to an end when someone hits a certain number of points. There's just a lot of similarities to Root. So you think, man, if I like Root, am I going to like Pirate Root? Maybe. But it is not designed by the same people who made Root, right? The designer of this game is Greg Loring Albright, who made not too many other games. They made a game called Block by Block Uprising that I never heard of, and Leviathan that I never heard of. Right?
Yep. So I had fun with this game. I do want to play it a few more times, at least one or two more times, because I do want to see how it all locks together. But basically, whereas Root is fully asymmetrical in that every faction is just completely different and you kind of just pick a set of them and go, this game, again, pre-expansion, just the game as is, has effectively two sets of factions that are almost playing their own games against each other on the same board. So on one hand,
Root has that also, right? Root is basically,
Root has that if you see through the matrix of how the mechanics are themed and look at the math of what's exactly happening. Yes, it is, in fact, the same kind of thing. But I guess the way it's framed that way here, too, because this game, on one hand, you've got two factions that play very differently that are directly fighting with each other. You got the Bluefin Squadron, basically Shark Navy. It's a navy of sharks. They've got...
It's a very classic kind of navy. They got a lot of boats that go around and go boom.
Yep. And they have their own mechanics for running the navy. And they can they can blow shit up. They can fortify things. They can be boat police, basically. And then you got, the Mollusk something. The Mollusk Union. And it's they're themed as a group of comrades in arms fighting to reclaim their ancestral home. And they are basically an uprising against the Shark Navy. They have a completely different set of mechanics. They have a card-based system and some other nonsense going on.
Mm-hmm.
So those two players are kind of directly competing and mostly doing the same thing. They're trying to control territory on the board, deny their opponent territory, attract smugglers to their lands, and collect victory points.
Yep, basically everyone takes a turn, and then based on who's got control of what territories, you do a scoring round and you get points. The two main factions get points, right?
Yep.
And then the other players, which are just all smugglers.
Yeah, they're all the same.
Right. Those players they're going around and they're basically shipping goods and delivering goods and somewhat interacting with the two main players, being interfered with by them and interfering with them and sometimes helping them. And they're just trying to sort of race against, these, main players who are sort of have a steady point getting machine. The smugglers have to run around and try to keep up with that machine or outpace that machine with their actions and activities.
Yep. So they're kind of directly competing, and the other two players are directly competing across each other. But where they intersect is really interesting because the area control aspect, where the smugglers are active, those areas become more valuable victory point-wise. So that's one way we interact. Two, everyone can shoot at each other. So, the two main players could just blow the shit out of the smugglers as they see fit. And the smugglers can also attack and mess with the main players however they see fit. But the smugglers, at the end of the game, get a bunch of extra victory points based on, effectively, they have been guessing over the course of the game which of the two other players will control different parts of the board or have been doing better, essentially. So I could be the Navy, and I rock the shit out of Joey Jojo Shabadoo playing the Mollusks. I destroy them. I control the most territory. I got a ton of points. But Scott the Smuggler might have seen me winning and basically loaded up on my stock And then Scott could win the game because it was obvious the whole time I was winning, and he positioned himself to collect all those victory points.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an intersection I have not really seen before, where the two main players play a game, the other two players compete with each other, and each of these sets of two players control different aspects and different clocks of what will end the game or drive the game to its conclusion. And I can speed up or slow down the game in one way, but the two smugglers might speed up and slow down the game in a different way. Exactly how those interact, I'm not exactly sure how well it works or not, because we only played it 1.6 times. So
yeah, I mean, it really felt like, because the way it's one of those systems where on your turn you roll some dice,
Yep.
right? And then you have a board of actions, and you can only assign dice to actions based on what they rolled. So you might not be able to take the actions you want. You can't take all the actions.
Yep. So like cannons are harder to do because they have to have rolled 5s and 6s to put dice on them. But like deploying boats, you can put anything there. Like it doesn't matter. So that's easier to do with your actions.
Yep. So on most of your turns, especially the late turns, you're just sort of assigning the dice to whatever gives you the best board position with the most victory points, right? And maybe there's a little bit of politics where you're, I have a dice and all I can do with it is attack. What do I attack? Do I attack the direct opponent, or do I attack the smugglers because they look like they're doing too much activity over
like
there?
say I know Scott the smuggler is hubrising, has gone all in on me, has bumped up all my places to high value, and that's where I'm getting all my points. I might just go destroy all Scott's biz and hinder him for the rest of the game to make sure that I stay on top. So there are dynamics like that. There's also a bunch of unique cards that serve a bunch of different purposes, but effectively the thing that's interesting is the mechanic that makes the most sense to talk about. They're kind of people that you can recruit onto your board that either give you powers or give you more places to put dice that do even more things.
Mm-hmm.
They're all radically different. There's a wide variety of the kinds of things they do. They feel like they are all actually very powerful. And game,
it's like they're either situationally super super strong or sort of useless, right?
Yep.
It's like man, if the situation was just right, any card would be like devastating. But if that situation doesn't happen, it's like, well, it's a card.
Yep. Like an example, there's one that if you have it, your main ship, if you're moving it around, if you go through wreckage, normally you take damage just whenever you sail through wreckage. But if you get the pilot, you don't take damage when you go through wreckage. So now you can sail through wreckage and other people can't without having consequences. Depending on how the map is laid out, that could just win the game for you. Like you could have absolute control of an area.
Islands that are behind some wreckage and no one can get back there without taking a bunch of damage. And so therefore you take over those islands with a few amount of resources and you've got them. No one's going to go back there and take them from you. And now you come back out from behind the wreckage and mess everyone up.
Yep.
And meanwhile, all those islands back there that just have like one guy each are just piling up points every scoring round. It's like, oh, okay, cool. No smugglers can't get back there easily to smuggle and trade goods back there. You're just all good. So
Yep. So the randomness though, because what the map looks like, the tiles of the map are placed by the players, and there's rules around that, and it seems like it is super important where they get placed. Placing a tile matters a lot.
Yeah.
So
a lot.
But the players have direct specific agency over placing the tiles. So as a result, you can almost decide what matters and doesn't. Are skulls easy to get, or are they all walled off behind a bunch of wreckage off in the corner? So players do have a lot of agency. The only strong randomness is the rolling of the dice. So I guess what I'm not sure of, there's so many mechanics. Like, it would be very hard for us to describe the specific mechanics. It took us a long time to learn the game to be able to play it. And we didn't even read through all the unique cards because that would have taken too long. I am not sure if you know the game fully and have played it enough to be good at it, how much agency you actually have over the result of the game, or if just the nature of all these tightly interlocking components will railroad you, because the way when we played, you felt really railroaded. There were multiple points where players had multiple rounds in a row where there was nothing material they could do that would impact the game just by the nature of the decisions everyone else had made up to that point.
Yeah, it's like, it's really interesting, actually, because a lot of games, either A, they give you, there's literally only so many choices. A or B, pick one. That's it. Those are your only moves you are allowed to make legally. Pick one, and you pick which one's better. Or games where there's so many choices, and you have to calculate each and every fucking single option. And you don't know, right? And it's just it's way too bushy. In this game, it seems like it's way too bushy. I got all these cards. I can assign these dice to any action I want, right? But so many of those choices can just be immediately eliminated as a move that does nothing. And if you look for moves that actually score you points or make other players lose victory points, because that's the only thing you're paying attention to is victory points, because you're a good player at games. Yeah. It's like, wow, even though I have all these cards and all these dice and all this stuff, the only things that will actually get me victory points or make someone else lose victory points are this move, maybe with some luck, because there's battles with dice also, right? And I guess I have to try that. We try it and see, and that's all. And it's, you look around, you're like, yep, there really isn't any other thing I could have done on my turn.
Now it's possible.
There's a lot of things you could have done on your turn, but in terms of mattering for victory points, not so many.
Now it did feel like a possibility here is that you had to think and plan long term. Because it feels like
Absolutely.
if you could make 3 seemingly useless moves, and then on the 4th turn, that turns into something big. But
there's a lot of moves you can make that are purely preparatory. Even something as simple as loading your cannons. It's like, that does nothing until later. If you bump into someone, now you can shoot them, right? So do you load cannons now, or do you do something else now that will get you immediate victory points?
And if, say we understood the game and knew all the cards and like had played enough to really know how this works, I could see this being a game where you see what other players do, and that is like in a fighting game when skilled players are playing, heavily telegraphing things, and the whole game might just be posturing and setting everything up and then trying to execute that interlocked mess.
Yep. Something else is that the Mollusk Union, who I played as, they have their own personal little deck of cards that are like one-use mega moves, kind of.
Yep.
And they draw from those decks steadily throughout the game. And because it was our first point, whatever, we stopped early, then we played and finished a second time. Because it was our first game, no one but me really knew what those cards said, because I didn't know what they said till I picked them up and read them during the game. I didn't read them before the game. So other people didn't really know what to expect and couldn't prepare for the devastating, absolutely insane cards that were in there.
There were multiple points where I did a really obvious smart move based on everything I knew about the game, and on Scott's turn, Scott pays a card that basically is, if Rim did the smart thing, Rim is fucked and out of the game. Like, kind of literally. It was really funny.
Basically because I did that like 2 times, right?
Yep.
But if people know what those cards are, that could, and they know what the possibilities of the Mollusk Union are, then they could make much more intelligent decisions about what to be prepared for, right? And, they also have to gamble. Like, did Scott draw that card or not? It's late in the game and he hasn't used any cards. He's probably got it. It's early in the game. He's only got 2 cards in his hand. Probably doesn't have it yet.
Yep.
So.
And meanwhile, I was playing the Navy, and the way the Navy works, everything's out on the table. Like, you just have a very straightforward, almost war game to play.
They're the cats. The root cats in the Navy.
But as a result, it was very obvious what my deal was, and I'm just running around trying to deal with all the other players. And the mechanics were very fun to engage with, but then it was a little frustrating that, like, all my mechanics just get sort of because that happens to be the character I played this one time, neutered by the mechanics of the mollusks. And they're very tightly balanced there. I guess I feel like there could be a really good game of bluffing and feinting and setting up traps, and I feel like there's a really good game here. But I also feel like that game is inaccessible unless you have played this enough to know all of the cards. And the problem is there's the Mollusk deck. There's also the deck of the crew, which is huge. And then there's all the possible tiles that could come out.
It's not that huge. I mean, you know the root deck, right? You know, better bird
Yeah.
bank. You know,
But the
you know
root
what's in
deck is
there.
way more constrained in terms of the kinds of things those cards do.
You could learn this deck.
You could, but you'd have to learn them.
What I think is that, you know, I think it's not as good as root only for one reason, right? Imagine playing root with cats, you know, Woodland Alliance, and 2 vagabonds, right?
Yep.
Is that the best route? Imagine if there were no birds in route, right? How good would that be as a game? It would be, you know, I mean, route is an excellent game, but is route with that layout of 4 players a good game?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not just the cards.
Because the vagabond is basically just a timer on everyone else, right? It's like saying if you don't play well enough, then this side wins. That it's like, you know, it's not really a great game. Here, you've got Sharks, which is cats. You got Mollusk Alliance, which is basically Woodland Alliance, right? And you've got 2 smugglers, which are sort of like vagabonds. They're sort of like a timer. They can only trade goods so quickly. That's the only real, you know, best way that they can get points. You know, sort of forcing the other 2 main factions to, you know, at least act at a certain speed. And is that the best? You know, it's like I'd rather play root because it has a birds in it. And, you know, an expansion that adds another faction, if it's not just smugglers, right, could bring this up to the root level. But because that isn't in the main box, which is what we played and what we're reviewing, I had to say it's, you know, it's not quite there.
Yep.
It's like a, you know, it's sort of like a slightly sad game of root. I'd rather play root, even though I do love the pirate theme.
Yep. And my turns were fun.
Not that I hate the root theme, but
yeah, but like my turns were fun. But even if you know the game, turns will take longer than root. Like I just see that happening. And you spend a lot of time doing nothing, but you also can't leave the table because while everyone else is taking their turn,
there might be a battle.
Yep. Or a card might affect you in some way and you have to make a decision. But I guess it's not just the cards. It's more broad than that, that to play the game that I think I see here, you have to really understand and internalize the game at an advanced level. And not that that's a bad game design, but that's a game design that requires someone to invest in a game and play it a lot. I think you'd have to play this game 4 or 5 times to be able to play it the way it is intended. That is what I feel. I want to test that by playing it a few more times, but I don't necessarily want to buy it, especially because I want to see if this expansion does anything. And I want to play it like at conventions to see if more unlocks and I see something beyond those initial plays by playing it more and internalizing the mechanics.
I'd say, you know, if you have played Root so much with all the expansions and all the combinations that you're tired of it, and you know you've squeezed all the blood from that stone.
God, I haven't even played 2 of the new factions because
right,
COVID,
and you're looking for some more. You know, this is basically going to be like, you know, different, similar flavor, but not the exact same flavor. And it, you know, it might get you a little bit more juice. You might be unsatisfied with it because it might not be as good, or maybe you get the expansion and who knows what's in there. And, you know, will it be worth your time? If this is really the kind of game you like and you like pirates, then you'll get some plays out of this. But if you haven't played like any of these games, obviously just play Root first, right? Yep. Don't reach for Ahoy until you're like, all right, I don't really want to play Root anymore, but I want to play something that shares many things with Root.
You know, I think I have actually very specific advice. I would say, if you have a group of 4 people, it has to be exactly 4 based on how I see this game going, who are willing to play it as a group repeatedly. Like this game, this is a game you've got to play with the same people over and over again to unlock what is best about it. So do not buy it unless you have a group of 4 people who will play it repeatedly. You got to get at least 8 plays out of it with that same group. Otherwise,
and when you're done, and if you either maybe you'll fall in love with it and keep playing it, or you can just sell it when it's done.
Yep.
Or put it on the shelf to take a nap.
And if you do that, if anyone out there plays this game more than 5 times with the same group of people. I really tell us what it's like. I really want to know, because I don't think I'm going to be able to pull that off. And I feel like Hansa Teutonica of all games achieves that type of posturing better and more abstractly with fewer mechanics.
Yep.
Even though it's a very different game, I think it achieves.
At the convention, I went ooh, and I read I wanted to play it so much that when I was on the other side of the country with my precious PAX time, I read the rules and played it more than once.
Yeah, we convinced 2 other people to join us and play it more than once.
And after playing it less than once and putting it away, we went and got it back and then played it fully.
Yeah,
there's something to it. But on the other hand, I didn't buy it. And I have no plans to buy it. So that tells you.
And it's little, so it wasn't a big box situation of don't buy it when we flew home. I could have fit it in my luggage.
Yep. So that's what kind of game this is. But I mean, if you're someone who collects games and doesn't play them, just really likes artwork, S to your game.
Oh yeah.